Welcome to the bold analysis. There are two sources of government revenue. That is taxation and then debts. Today, I want us to look at Jimmy Wanjigi's warning to President William Ruto that we are tethering the danger of the debt default. The President UDA administration are on record saying they want to fashion the tax regime like that of former president, of our third president, Mwai Kibaki, who expanded the tax base from 200 billion to 1 trillion by the time he was leaving office. But then the question that many are also saying is, Mwai Kibaki really opened up the space, and also he did not inherit a huge debt like that which UDA administration really are going through. However, the overtaxation claims are also emerging, and Jimmy Wanjigi is simply saying we are being taxed to pay debt. And if we are paying debt, then that means that there is less for the Kenyan people. According to what is expected here is when we borrow debts, they should actually go for development. In this podcast, we'll also look at why the UDA administration are yet, or rather they have declined to publish the debt register. Kindly subscribe to our channel. I want us to go straight to our fact sheet here. And I need to make a disclaimer. In the previous video I did about housing fund, there was a bit of a mishap. I said 95% of Kenyans are earning less than 150,000. So it's not more than. It's 95% earning less than 150,000. Now in this fact sheet, there are some very interesting facts you need to look at here. Our debt burden stands at 9 trillion. That's what we have. Out of this 9 trillion, Jubilee administration between 2018 to 2022 borrowed 2.1 trillion. And remember, this is coming while the current administration have been insisting that Uhuru Kenyatta have borrowed. But if you look at data, you'll be shocked that that is not even it. So in the next financial year that President Ruto has actually done, 1.2 trillion is our debt bill. But then this is what I wanted to listen to Eric Latif asking William Ruto this question in the last roundtable interview here.
Excellency, you've said, and this is not just today, even previously, that the Jubilee handshake administration went on an irresponsible borrowing spree. They took loans worth 4.1 trillion shillings in just the 5 years of 2018 to 2022. How much is our public debt today, Mr. President?
Our public debt is in the region of 8.8 trillion. Close to 9 trillion. There are countries in our continent that have defaulted in their payments. When I am president, Kenya will not go that route.
And many would want to know, are we in the danger of default? You know, that is the question. Because the most, one of the understanding that is coming is that we are being taxed to pay that tax test. Jimmy Wanjigi is saying that when you see government now talking about delayed salaries, and I want to add one in that list, the looming counties shut down, they're yet to receive their pay, it is a clear signal when you see civil servants talking about the fact that we have to sort out either, then it's a clear signal of, it is a little signal on the danger of default. And William Ruto's taxation regime in the finance bill is just in bad faith and acting in panic. That is what Jim Wanjigi is saying, that we are in the danger of default. But this is the truth that is really hidden, and maybe no one wants to speak about it. And I think the former presidential candidate has a point here.
We are already at what you call diminishing returns on tax collections. How much more are you going to squeeze us? They will not raise that revenue. Now, what is illustrative is something that is not being talked about enough. The danger of debt default. Okay? When you start seeing a government struggling with paying salaries, Eric, as you mentioned, you've seen some of the government's people on television talking about the balance between debt and salaries. What are the priorities? We are tethering on what is called debt default. And I think Kenyans need to understand what that means to our lives.
And I can urge you, get some time and listen to that Jim Wanjigi's interview in Spice FM. He's doing a very good, and he's the first person that did a forensic audit of our debt 1 month to the last year's general election. But something that has also happened is you will realize that immediately the UDA administration came into power, they went quiet on the question of debt. And I remember Musalia Mudavadi was very specific and was very lethal on attacking former President Uhuru Kenyatta on the question of debt. But we are talking about an economic recovery template on maybe serving our debts as one of the things that is there. However, this document, there is a document known as debt register. The debt register is the register that will show us that out of the 9 trillion that we are saying is our debt burden, who are these people we are borrowing from? And what is the time frame in which the borrowing was done? And also, how was that money used even after borrowing? And in that interview, President said, I don't want to comment about what happened in the past. I want to look at what's in the future. But the challenge, he was challenged that why don't the UDA administration publish the debt register? Because it is what would help to track our debts, especially in this time that are talking about it.
Latif, you saw there was a delay of salaries for about 2-3 days, in April.
Yes.
Because some characters thought that I was joking. I told them, listen, we are going to live within our means. Even if we have to delay for salaries for 2-3 days, we will. So that people begin to internalize that we cannot continue borrowing.
That then, Mr. President, are you prepared in your administration to publish the debt register? Because this is one thing that even the previous parliaments have tried to push. It hasn't been published. To date, we know the figure, we don't know the details. Are you prepared to publish the debt register, audit the debt register, and to hold anybody accountable for any money that may have been borrowed?
Why not?
And misappropriated?
Why not?
When will this happen?
Why not? We have, in fact, we already have a bill in Parliament, for purposes of placing on record any borrowing that is done by the government of Kenya. It must be borrowing that is made available so that the people of Kenya who ultimately have to pay must hold government to account.
Now that register has never been made public. Even Parliament tried in the previous administration, but it has always been kept a highly guarded secret. So in this podcast, I'm going to look at what the reason why the UD administration are not going, or rather they are so much cagey on publishing the debt register. But just to make you understand the level of our debt, or rather the level of the problem in terms of taxation, it is deep. And I received a video from a gentleman who is talking about the license. And you know, the question of William Ruto is saying we are not being taxed. But from what the population is saying, people are feeling the pinch. There is a gentleman here. I wanted to listen to how he's actually saying, I don't want to support William Ruto because this is not we asked for. I really felt his beat here.
For the first time, nakubaliana na baba anaitana demonstrations, hatuendi, tunacheka tunasema baba anatuharibia kazi, sisi wana biashara. But now my eyes have opened. Nilienda hata kulipa license. License nilikuwa nimezoea kulipa 7,000, kwenda kulipa ni 14,000. Yeah. Alafu tunaambiwa tulipe 2,000 ati za health. 2,000 za health. Hakuna mahali wanafanya ile health investigation ama nini, but tunalipa 2,000. Out of that 14,000 kuna another 2,000 unalipa sijui ya health certificate sijui nini. Mimi nauza gambut, nauza bulb. Health inakujia wapi? Alafu hii 2,000 inaenda wapi? Jamani, it's high time we join baba in these demonstrations. Wacha tufunge duka mwaka mzima and Kenya becomes a better place. Hakuna haja ikuwe hii economy na benefit only a few, but majority will be suffering.
So you can see, that's why I'm saying that the question of taxation is very deep. And I have seen William Ruto trying to compare them with Mwai Kibaki. What Mwai Kibaki did is different from what the UD administration is doing. What they are doing is they're not expanding the tax base. In fact, an expansion of the tax base is to add many people or many other players in the bracket. But instead, the bracket has still remained the same civil servants. They're the ones we are still targeting, while as we speak, 65% of the Kenyan population are really getting good pay in the informal sector. So we cannot still tap. We are still using the 19th century direct taxation regime, and that is why we cannot bring many other people in the tax bracket. The question of overtaxation, while William Ruto is insisting, I'm not overtaxing you, but President, you are overtaxing the nation because you're still raiding the same payroll. You know, and it's not just on that. There are quite a number, even what that gentleman is talking about there. Mwai Kibaki got it different. He actually opened up the business spaces. And I remember Jimmy giving an example of the media, where there were licenses given to many other radio stations and TV stations and vernacular stations. And with that, it expanded even the revenue stream in the media houses. And people could make money, and then government get tax. What happened? We wasted money in Hustler Fund, with an understanding that with the Hustler Fund, many people will get to the business bracket. Then when they get to that business bracket, we will tax them, or rather it will broaden the tax base. So you wonder, if we are giving people 500 shillings to go and start mamamboga businesses, that is still informal. We still don't have a regime, we still don't have a strategy to collect the taxes from the informal sector. I don't just know how that will be, but then there is a bit of it. Back to the register, debt register. Majority of our debts, quite a huge chunk of our debts were misappropriated. I don't have evidence on this. But since one, we were actually borrowing to pay expenditure, to pay recurrent. But if you remember the 2014 Eurobond that Raila Odinga and the team really spoke about, when you follow up, you will realize that it was gobbled somewhere in Europe. And that is why most of it that even happened, you know, you can complain about Uhuru Kenyatta's regime to have borrowed. But if you look at what is started, like those subsidies, maybe the maize subsidy, let's accept it never worked. But about the electricity subsidy, it worked. There were quite a number of other projects that were done. And even if you were to do an audit, I was just speaking to someone about this debt story, and he was telling me, if you had to do an audit, you will realize that Uhuru Kenyatta, yes, borrowed. But what was borrowed was actually used for the other purposes, for the purposes of recurrent expenditure. And it was in the wake of COVID-19. So he had to borrow at that time because the economy was actually going down. That is also one thing we are not appreciating. If you cannot compare that with the other term. So he borrowed because of COVID. And those COVID billionaires were actually global fund money. It was not money borrowed. I think people need to get that right. The COVID billionaire was actually global fund money. Now, probably, we might have borrowed more during Uhuru Ruto reign than the handshake reign that we're talking about. And that's why you cannot publish that register. Because politically, what the nation has always been told is that Uhuru Kenyatta overborrowed, went in some borrowing spree, and plunged the country in total chaos. Even if, and again, this one you don't need rocket science. The debt burden is 9 trillion. Uhuru Kenyatta in that time borrowed 2.1 trillion. How much has Ruto borrowed so far? You may have to dig deep and find out yourself for that. This debt data may also not be true, representation of the real thing. It may be more. It may be more. Because you may want to control, and you don't want to tell people that we're in the bracket of debt defaulting. One of the things that we must appreciate is that there was political feasting on the debts borrowed. Political feasting. Most of it were actually used for political mobilization efforts, even in 2019. That is something we must really accept. But if we are to manage our debts, then publish the debt register so that we know it's subjected to scrutiny and audit. We know what went wrong in the past and what are we getting right. From the lips of Jimmy Wanjigi, we are in the danger of debt default. And there is one option of accepting to default and handle it from there. Hi guys, my name is Kevin of the Bold Analysis. Are you looking for fresh Kenyan flour? Then you need credible, certified and trusted company. And that is why I want to introduce to you Jay's Flowers Limited. Jay's Flowers Limited is a company that is currently based at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And what you need to do is very simple. When you place your order with Jay's Flowers Limited, they will help you to get fresh flowers from the farm and also process the exportation to the country of destination. This is a trusted company that is currently working with clients from 7 continents across the world. What you need to know, you need to get more information by contacting them here, +254 7433 94954. Jay's Flowers Limited, the home of quality flowers.